Hello and welcome to the Global AI podcast, emanating from the second Global AI Summit in Riyadh, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. On today's episode, we have Jennifer LaPlante, the Executive Director of DeepSense. Thank you for being with us on this episode.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Jennifer, how about we dive into the questions and get your input on how Saudi can utilize AI to achieve its national economic strategy?
I think AI is an incredible tool that can be used. When I look at the growth that Saudi's experiencing, especially in something like tourism, for example, there's an incredible amount of opportunity to integrate technology and collect data that can make Saudi really attractive to consumers. So you might be able to better understand tourists and what their expectations are and make it a really unique experience when they come here, because you're using data and making predictions around how they want to be treated in events and things you can do with them. And you really have an opportunity to collect new data and build an infrastructure that didn't exist before. And AI can make some really tailored experiences for people to make it unique for them.
Okay, that's very interesting. And can you give us an example of just how artificial intelligence can enhance the tourist experience journey, for example?
Absolutely. I think, the more data you collect, the more you can understand around behavior. So imagine you have a bit of data collected about some consumers and some tourists, and they come, and now that you know how they've engaged, interacted, where they've gone, what kind of foods they like to eat, what time they want to go to bed, how they need to be treated because they're still jet lagged. There is opportunity to know how to predict how to better treat your tourists later on. So in the future, you might know, okay, this person just arrived and they're coming from somewhere in Europe and they're probably going to be really tired. So let's meet them and let's provide them extra pillows and remind them there's lots of opportunity to sleep, and you have a chance to serve them later by taking them somewhere exciting to see a museum. So it's just really understanding how consumers are going to behave when they're here and how to kind of anticipate their needs before they're expressed.
All right, that's a nice outlook to look at. I mean, collecting data, it can be tricky also to identify certain solutions, and certain sectors are more prevalent, depending on the gender. So, for example, the tourism sector is more prevalent with females. How can AI address the gender gaps in countries where, for example, females are more prevalent than men in these sectors?
Absolutely. So, I mean, we've touched on education and tourism, where there tends to be more women in these sectors. There might be ways that AI can make jobs a little easier for some folks. So maybe there's certain tasks that are very labor intensive, unpleasant, and hard to find workers to do.
Okay.
And maybe we can have AI that can go and complete some of these tasks that may be more manual as it relates to some kind of technology. I think, we touched on this one earlier. I think sometimes too, we really have to think about some of the challenges with that data. So AI is often created by technology people who might be more heavily dominated to be men. And I think it's making sure that whatever AI we create really understands how the AI is going to be used. So maybe it could really help someone in their role in tourism, for example, and they're a woman, but maybe it actually will make it worse for them as well. So it's really understanding how the AI is created and how it's benefiting the end user.
Okay. And what are examples of how it can be utilized to, be implemented for the betterment of the sector?
Well, things like maybe job scheduling. Maybe there's certain roles that people have to work in certain hours of the day, and maybe there's ways to predict and understand schedules for when you might have, we'll go back to the tourism sector. So maybe we want to know when to have more people on staff, what time people need to work, and maybe there's ways to use AI to automate some of these scheduling processes for resources.
Okay.
And so it's taking the work out of the hands of one person that could be very manual and automating a process that could better understand all the activities within a resort or a hotel, and then schedule folks and optimize the resources available, as well as better support the workers and know what times best work for them to be working as well.
Okay. And in your line of work, you aim to promote economic growth through the use of AI. What is the future impact for economies that are adopting more policies that are relevant towards AI ethics use?
It's a great question, because I think, the ethics around AI is really tricky. We don't know necessarily what data was used to train to create models that are then used for prediction. And my area of focus is oceans, and it's ocean AI. And
Okay.
so when we look at things like tourism alone, but then we get into energy production and use, it's really important for us to know how someone created the AI they're using, and then what rules were made around how it was created and who's going to deploy it and how they're going to use it. And so as more policies are developed, where countries go and adopt those policies and can more easily demonstrate the transparencies around the artificial intelligence they've created, it will allow for more people to accept the AI and trust it. And I think there's some
Okay.
real value, and you want to have people ask questions and kind of understand, is that AI fair to me? And by adopting policies that show you're creating ethical AI in the first place, hopefully people won't be asking as many questions, or they'll have more of a trust, at least, in what's being produced.
Okay. And one of the pillars for the Global AI Summit is called AI Never. Things that artificial intelligence will never be a part of. How do you feel that these that works with the use of AI ethics? And
Yeah, so it's tricky because I think there's some parts around, some medical, maybe there's some reasons why you might not want to necessarily have AI in some medicine, or maybe there's some parts around just roles that you just don't simply want to automate. And I think the ethical piece is really asking the questions of, should you be using certain AI? I mean, when you get into complex machine learning and neural nets, you can't explain it. They're not explainable. And so if you can't explain something, maybe you shouldn't be using AI in that situation. And so I think really it just is trying to do a case-by-case use case example and review of, does it make sense for us to be using AI here? And maybe we should never use it.
all right. And where do you see basically the future going with the use of AI ethics moving forward?
Well, I think it's a global challenge, and we all have to be somewhat aligned in the standards and the approach that we have, and trying to be transparent about how this is being developed. There's a lot of different groups around the world who are working towards it. And I think, things like having a summit here and having ethics as a topic of discussion is critical, because the more that we talk about it and expose challenges, we're all starting to get onto the same kind of path and get aligned in our beliefs that we need to take steps to make sure that we're very ethical in how we're using this.
All right. And what are your thoughts about basically the Global AI Summit and Saudi's efforts in working in the artificial intelligence field and holding global events such as the AI Summit?
Well, I think there's a couple things. One is there's a reminder that regardless of where you are in the world, what sector you are in the world, all of the challenges with understanding and adopting AI are consistent. There's still challenges with understanding data, finding the right use cases, finding the experts and the resources.
Okay.
And it's really, we're going to see this exponential growth in AI, but we don't necessarily have that many resources available. So it's trying to find the ways to have people see this as a career path and try to walk down the path of, this is, something I want to do with my life. And then I also think too, it's great to see such a great mix of industry, academia, and global representation here. It's a reminder that we're all coming together and sharing ideas. And I've had some incredible conversations with potential collaborators already, and it's only been a day and a half.
All right. And, the summit's sort of like a think tank, because it's, it's bringing together decision makers, innovators, entrepreneurs, all together in one place. And as you said, there's discussions going around about, how the industry is going to move forward. What key takeaways do you want to, basically go home with after attending the summit?
I think, well, no matter what, I definitely really enjoy meeting people. So a takeaway is connections with others and potential collaborations. And a key takeaway for me is a leave behind. I gave a talk on ocean AI and why AI is so critically important. And afterwards had a really good discussion with a Saudi who was talking about how ocean identifying oil spills in the ocean, and how we can use AI to stop and identify and prevent And I think part of this is that dialogue of making sure that there's a takeaway that others are learning, and we get a chance to kind of work together to try to understand how transferable we can take solutions we've had in other areas that make sense somewhere else. And I think the big takeaway is making sure we all work together to try to find solutions to problems that we have regardless of where we are in the world.
Okay, and a final question regarding the privacy of obtaining data. How do you see the basically economies becoming more confident in basically utilizing the use of artificial intelligence if there is transparency or lack of it regarding the obtainment of data and the privacy in artificial intelligence?
It's a tricky one, I think. It was funny. There was a session just before I came in here talking along the lines of some of the challenges that some locations have had where there isn't transparency of data, or data is being collected in a way that isn't always clear, and who's using it and how they're using it. It's going to continue to be a challenge, but I do think that consumers and residents are starting to understand that maybe sharing some of their information isn't something they were expected was going to happen. And then there's questions around what's going to be done with that data. And I think that's where the AI ethics comes into play.
Okay.
Was the data, was it collected consensually? Do people know it's being used for this purpose? And I might go to a doctor and give them information, but if they take that data and it's sold off to a company that's going to produce some kind of medical supply, maybe that's okay, because maybe they're going to make something that's a really great solution that can solve a bunch of problems and illnesses in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But if they can link it back to me individually, maybe that's also not good.
Right.
So I think it's just the ongoing discussion and people asking questions around what happens with their data and who's using it, how they're using it, and what's going to come of it when it gets collected and stored somewhere.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for being with us. We hope you enjoy the rest of your visit here at the Global AI Summit, and we'd like to wish you a good day.
Thank you.
All right. And that's all that we have for this episode for the Global AI podcast. Tune in to our next episode. Goodbye.